This video is on automation. So exactly what is automation? Automation is basically when people create a system that can operate or work automatically. And by automatically, what I mean here is that it can work without needing people to be involved. Automation could also mean uh, it requires less people to be involved than the previous process of doing it. For example, maybe somebody starts the process, but then it can run for hours or days without needing more people to become involved. Let's show an example of automation. So here you have the process of um, cooking or baking, part of it automated. So as you can see in the video, in the back, the process of cutting the dough into exactly that size has been automated. The process of then flipping it and putting it into these trays have been automated. The process of moving these trays to the next step have been automated. So here they've automated, or you can see a video of them automating a process or a part of the baking or cooking process here. Okay, so exactly how long has automation been happening? Um, uh, the answer is just a really, really long time. One of the earliest uh, like record or thing that they automated goes all the way back about 2,300 years to somewhere around 300 BC with the invention of a water clock. A water clock looks sort of like this, and it basically what it sounds like. They use water to make a clock. The water would go down this pipe or down this into this funnel, and it would slowly sort of drip into this container. As the water slowly dripped into the container, uh, this container would fill up, causing it to slowly rise and turn the clock through a series of gears. So here, as long as somebody kept the water running, the clock would just continue to turn. So this is one of the earliest automation uh, or records of automation that we have. So the water wheel. Um, Automation took a really big leap forward in Western Europe and the US starting in the around 1900s. And the reason for that comes down to this invention right here, the steam engine. So in 1912, um, they found a way to basically turn any source of heat or hot heat um, into power that can run something. And that was basically, for all intents and purposes, you burn something, it like produces steam because you add water to it, and that steam basically drives the engine. And that basically led to a lot of other things getting automated because now we had a source of power. One really famous example is the Cott engine. And this had the Cott engine had a very significant effect here in the United States. So cotton is actually something that comes from a plant, and right here to your right is what that plant looks like. And when you take that cotton has actually a lot of seeds in it. And in order to use that cotton, all the seeds have to be removed. And originally, what would happen is after they take the cotton from the plant, somebody would have to actually go and by hand remove all the seeds. And this just took a long time. One person could remove the seeds to about 1 pound of cotton per day. So just very labor intensive, required a lot of people, a lot of man hours. That sort of all changed in 1794 with the invention of the cotton gin. This is what the early cotton gin looked like. This picture here on the right, and what basically it was just a small box with these things here in the middle. Huh. Okay. With these gears and contraptions here in the middle, and somebody would turn this crank here on the right, and it would just spin the contraption. And that contraption would basically, or this machine would basically just separate the seeds from the cotton. And with this one machine and one worker, they could separate the seeds from about 50 pounds of cotton per day. So it went from, so this machine plus one person could do the same amount of work as 50 people. And this is just what the earliest cotton gin looked like. And this isn't quite 100% automation. You definitely still need someone turning that crank. But it definitely requires a lot less people. And not too long after the first cotton gin was created, they automated a lot more. They just made bigger versions of what you see here. And then they attached a steam engine to turn the crank instead of having a person do it. The larger steam engine versions of this could do the same amount of work as hundreds of people. That led to the cotton gin led to basically such a big increase in efficiency that by the middle of the 1800s, the US actually produced about 75% of the whole world's cotton. Remember back then, technology traveled much slower, so it took longer for that technology to basically be used in other places. By the middle of the 1800s, the U.S. was producing about 75% of the whole world's cotton, and 60% of all U.S. exports was cotton, because just producing cotton in the U.S. because of the cotton gin was so much more efficient than everywhere else that it just did not make sense for other people not to just buy U.S. produced cotton. Specifically, the cotton was grown in the South, and then a lot of textile mills sprung up here in New England to use that cotton. Textile is just clothes, or the fabric for clothes. So these were just factories that would use the cotton and turn them into the sheets of material that you would then make clothes out of. An example here in Fall River, Massachusetts, it was a big center for textile mills back then. Okay, so those were a few examples of automation. The very oldest, water clock, then cotton gins, and this is what a more modern form of automation looks like. So why exactly does automation happen? Well, for businesses, one of the largest costs is the cost of their employees. And machines, like we were just saying, and automation in general, just requires fewer people to be involved, almost by the definition of automation. So, uh, automation reduces the amount of people that need to be involved and the amount of people that need to be paid. These automated systems, these machines, in general, tend to be more expensive than just hiring people in the short term. And short term, I'm talking about a month, a year, 2 years. So if you only look at that short term period of time, machines tend to be more expensive than just hiring people. But if you look at the longer term, uh, 10 years, 5 years, these machines tend to be cheaper than people. Um, so basically, it's automation is a way of making a process more efficient and typically lowers the cost of making that thing. Where is the automation happening? This is the why. Where is it happening? Well, uh, let's look all the way back at early automation, and I'll go from early automation to automation nowadays. In the very earliest automation, um, it was used primarily in manufacturing and production, um, making things. And you saw already uh, examples of making cloth, or I guess the thing that would then make cloth, the whole cotton gin thing. Um, it's used a lot nowadays in the manufacturing of cars. The pieces that go into making the car um, is manufactured, um, and a lot of the process of making cars is automated nowadays. Uh, in food production, like I think I said before, mixing and stirring. In this particular first example, you saw the whole cutting it and placing it, but the ingredients for this was almost definitely mixed uh, by a machine. So basically, food production, making of things. This is what I mean by early automation focused on manufacturing and production. These early automation focused a lot on basically jobs that needed a lot of muscle power, needed a lot of humans doing things. These muscle power jobs, uh, they are called blue collar work or blue collar jobs. So if you ever hear this term, that's what that means. Blue collar means basically jobs that require using your muscles. And so early automation uh, targeted a lot of these blue collar jobs, manufacturing, production. Why were these the types of jobs that early automation targeted? Uh, because basically these types of jobs were the easiest uh, to automate and uh, had a lot of people doing it. So if you have a lot of people doing it and you're able to invent something that requires less people, then it produces a big result because there's so many people already doing those blue collar jobs. These tasks that were automated quickly were tasks that were repetitive, that you had to do the same thing over and over and over again, and required very little thinking. These were basically the easiest things to automate, so they were the first things to be automated. An example of this would just be mixing ingredients. Uh, so the sort of next level of things to be automated were more complex tasks. So what they would do is they would take a complex task that, and by complex, I just mean a task that has a lot of steps. And they would take that complex task and they would just break it down into a whole bunch of simpler tasks. And then they would automate each one of those simple tasks. So, an example of this complex task that might be automated uh, is making donuts. And you can break down the complex task of making donuts into a whole bunch of simple tasks. First, you add ingredients in a particular ratio. Next, you mix the ingredients. Next, you roll the dough. Next, you cut the dough into pieces. Next, you wrap the dough into a circle, etc. So these are the sort of like mid-level types of tasks that were then automated, complex tasks that could be broken down into simple tasks. And like the hardest tasks to automate that they're still currently working on, these are the sort of the skills that the that they're finding hardest to automate. So tasks that require interacting with people, and that's just because people and their responses or what they ask for is just very complex. It's not going to be the same thing every single time. So interacting with people, example, customer service, sales, taking care of people, those types of tasks are very hard to automate because we are complex. And so interacting with people is complex. Tasks that are novel or new, that is hard to automate. Tasks that require moving around a whole lot of different environments. So running across an open field, then up a hill, then through a forest, that would be a very difficult task for a machine. Even though for us, we in shoes, we could do that. Or finally, tasks that require very complex decision making. These are all considered difficult for computers to do. So let's look at some of the. So I asked before, um, where's the automation happening? And I gave you a bunch of examples of companies, corporations, or businesses automating. But um, we, just normal people, are also automating parts of our lives. So, an example of things that we have automated in our own life, alarm clocks. So, what you're looking at, these three pictures, this was a job back in the day called knock uppers. They were basically human alarm clocks. You would hire these people, and they would come and basically um, wake you up at a specific time. These very long sticks that you see here, they would basically walk by your apartment or your house, and they would basically just knock on your window um, to wake you up. Or the reason you see this little sort of straw in this person's hand, they would basically shoot frozen peas at your window and hit your window with it in order to wake you up in the morning. So this was a job that a person would do back in the day. But of course now, all of us, we just program it into our alarm clock, smartphone, or whatever, and it does it for us. Another big one is dishwashing. Um, I don't think I need to say much about this. We all know what a dishwasher is. But before dishwashers, we all had to do that by hand. Required lots of manpower, lots of muscle work. Now we just pop it in there and the machine does the task for us. We hit start, we put in some soap, or we put in some soap, we hit start, and the next 2 hours, the process is automated. Automation took another sort of leap forward with the inventions of computers. Um, Computers are actually not that old. We've only had electronic computers for about 100 years. And here, when I say electronic computers, before electronic computers, we had mechanical computers with a lot more moving parts. In 1941, the first fully digital computer was created. In 1977, the first personal computer called the Commodore was created. So personal computers are only about 40 years old. 1977, the Commodore computer came out. 1981, IBM came out with the Acorn, their first personal computer. So personal computers have only been around for about 40 years. And then smartphones. Nowadays, we all, or many of us, carry around just computers in our phone. But smartphones only about 15 years old. The first iPhone came out in 2007, so about 15 years old. With the invention of computers, and as computers have gotten more and more powerful, we're able to break down more and more complex tasks into simple tasks that the computer can handle. And as these more complex tasks get broken up into simple tasks, more things are able to be automated. More recently, in the last about 20 years or so, artificial intelligence has sort of become the new driver of automating processes. And artificial intelligence is basically just a computer that can mimic intelligence, a computer that can learn. And for all intents and purposes, what these computers do is they will be programmed to do something, and the first time they do it, it's usually pretty bad. But the computer is able to look at its own results and then change things about it, make adjustments, and then it will do something, make a change, do it again with that change, and look at the results. Did the results get better? Did the results get worse? And it will continue to do that process over and over and over again and improve. And of course, with the invention of artificial intelligence, even more complex tasks have been able to be automated. Artificial intelligence right now is being used in healthcare in order to diagnose or figure out what's wrong. Artificial intelligence is being used in the biotech industry. Biotech is just technology involving biology or living things. The biotech industry is using artificial intelligence to help with their drug development, where basically the artificial intelligence actually comes up with possible chemicals that might have a positive effect. And then they will actually run the tests on these, they'll make and then run tests on these new chemicals to see if they actually do have a positive effect. Artificial intelligence is being used in producing self-driving cars. I personally think in the not too distant future, you'll have a lot of cars be turned into self-driving cars, which will majorly affect the trucking industry, taxis, Ubers, things like that. At this point, with the invention of AI, we've been able to get computers to be better than people at a whole lot of different sort of things, different jobs and tasks. And every year we're making the computers able to do more and more complex things. A interesting way of looking at it is looking at artificial intelligence versus humans in particular games. So it wasn't until 1997 that they finally produced a computer that could beat a chess champion. This was the computer was called Deep Blue, and the grand chess master that the computer beat was this Russian called Kasparov. And that happened in 1997. In 2016, they finally created an artificial intelligence that was able to beat a Go grand champion. Go is a much more complex game than chess. And I believe this was a Chinese grand champion that they beat at the time. In 2022, they finally created a computer that could beat like professional video game players at this game called Gran Turismo. And they have not yet been able to create a computer that could beat professional League of Legends players. And why am I using these as the example? It basically goes from the least complicated game to a more complicated game to even more complicated game to a very complicated game. And as you see, as the years go on, they're able to produce computers that can do more and more complex, in this case, games. And that's basically because they're producing these computers that can learn. Random thing, in 2020, they produced a computer that could beat humans in airplane-to-airplane combat, which is pretty scary. But either way, so this is a quick look at automation throughout the years. As we go forward, more and more complex tasks will be automated.